To kick things off now in our opening keynote session with Dremio CEO Sendur Sellakumar, who joins us live in the studio first and foremost. Sendur, welcome here into our lovely studios. Thank you very much for joining us. How are you?
I'm good. I appreciate you having me here.
No, absolutely. You've got a presentation that we're going to get into very shortly, but in a nutshell, it's been an exciting year for Dremio, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. It has. We've got great customers, and of course, hopefully future customers as well, and sort of growing our business. We're very happy. You know, we are a customer-driven organization at the end of the day, and so as being a data lakehouse provider to those customers, both in the cloud as well as on premises, it's been a fun journey, and excited for the years to come.
Fantastic. Well, look, let's get into it, shall we? We're going to be hearing, of course, about the report that was released just last month. So, folks watching along, as I've said already, any thoughts, comments, questions, anything at all, whilst we have Sendur here with us today, do get them in, and we'll bring you in at the appropriate points a little bit later on. But all being well, Sendur, we've got your presentation deck ready. So there it is. In fact, we can see it here in the studio. So let's hand things over to you. Take us away.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ox. Well, thanks everyone for joining today. My name is Sendur Sellakumar. I'm CEO here at Dremio. Very excited to be here with you today to talk about both Dremio as well as the data trends and predictions for 2024. Now, predictions come from data ultimately, and so let's start with that. We've had hundreds of conversations this year with customers and prospects, talking to CDOs, CIOs, and data practitioners. And there's been a common theme across a lot of them, which is they're all seeking this analytics nirvana. And what does this nirvana entail? It's really three major steps. The first is they want to drive data-driven organizations. And what does that mean? Well, that means users running queries, analyzing data in a secure, governed environment with, of course, right quality of data involved. Once you have that, then users say, well, I want to get those insights faster. And so, yes, they can run more queries, but that's not the nirvana. The nirvana is, I want to get to business outcomes and decisions faster, and they want to get to insights faster. We call that lowering your mean time to insight, or MTTI. Now, you've got queries, you've got data adoption happening, you then have faster insights happening, but that has to happen in the context of massive data volume growth, but certainly not budgets growing that fast. So lowering the cost of analytics is equally as important, because you can't have that be a runaway thing. So those are the trends that we are seeing and that nirvana balance that customers are trying to drive to. But unfortunately, historical data infrastructure has been challenged to achieve these outcomes. And it's not surprising, given the paradigm that's been the case for decades, which is that you've got transactional systems, such as ERPs, SaaS applications, etc., going over, with that data going over ETL pipelines to some centralized storage. 10, 15 years ago, that was network attached storage. Today, that's object storage. And then from there, ETLing further into a data warehouse. And from there, extracting or cubes over to various clients, whether they be BI clients or what have you. And so this chain existed 10, 15 years ago. It still exists to this day for a lot of organizations. And what that means is you've got a lot of brittle ETL pipelines everywhere. Now, certainly there's new vendors that have helped advance this further, but the fundamental physics are the same. But you take that model and that paradigm, and on top of that, you add in where we sit today, which are data engineers dealing with an ever-increasing volume of data, which now means they're dealing with more complex data platforms to manage, and yet an ever-increasing amount of data operations as well. So this complexity is created. But users, to be sure, don't care about that. What they care about is, I want my answer faster, more accurate, and they want to be unshackled to operate, to be able to make business decisions quickly, pivot on those decisions, and leverage the data. So what's been happening? Well, the first major simplification, of course, is the Lakehouse. Okay? That Lakehouse is a notion that we have a simplification in that first step. So what does that mean? That means that we take a portion and shift left the analytics, which is merging this concept of a data lake and a data warehouse to be one, a common data lakehouse. No more ETL to the data warehouse. You access all of your data in the lake. Now, of course, with the advent of table formats like Apache Iceberg, you get the best of both worlds. A lakehouse that has rich SQL capabilities for data warehousing needs, like traditional data warehousing needs, and of course, a data lake concept which provides reduced complexity and cost. That combination is why we see data lakehouses having a rapid adoption in the market. In fact, we did a recent survey of 500 data practitioners. And we asked them, well, what do you think about a data lakehouse? Are you aware of this? And in fact, 85% of them are keenly aware not only of a data lakehouse, but the benefits that that lakehouse can provide to their organizations. They recognize that, number one, it is enterprise ready, scalable, and performant for the needs of that enterprise with security and governance built in. Second, it can reduce complexity, as we talked about earlier, being able to remove those ETL pipelines that have now gone to the data warehouse. We not only eliminate the traditional data warehouse and the spend associated with that, but also the ETL pipelines that move data and copy data over, which of course we all want to do less of. And finally, it's cost optimization. That's pretty significant, of course, in terms of the amount of value that customers are seeing from data lakehouses. Now, I'm curious in the audience, what percentage of your analytics do you predict will be running in the data lakehouse in the next 3 years? 0 to 25%, 26 to 50%, 50 to 75%, or 76 to 100%. Curious on where you all sit. Now that poll is open and available to you via your web portal. Feel free to put in your option there, and we'll wait for this a few more seconds here for the poll to close. So I'm very curious what all that feedback is. So now, what does data lakehouse adoption look like? In that same practitioner list of 500 practitioners, nearly 70% of them felt that the majority of their data workload, not 10%, not 20%, but rather the majority of their data workloads going forward, and really the next 3 years, will be on a lakehouse platform. And yet, even if you look at the data in totality, nearly all will adopt some form of a data lakehouse architecture to address one or more percent, frankly, of their data needs. And in fact, all that's left is maybe 1 out of the 500 that's decided not to pursue. That's pretty surprising. Why is there this massive adoption? We'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, let's bring up the poll here of the results from the team online and what that poll looks like in terms of percentages. Okay, well that's pretty interesting. Kind of reflects our data. In fact, almost 39%, 51 to 75% expect the data lakehouse to be a big portion of their workloads. Some up to 100%. We're seeing that be significant. Very interesting to see. Clearly, you all see the value of that data lakehouse and all the capabilities that it will provide. So interesting interest there, and we'll see more around that area. Now, all of them are saving massively here. So what's driving this adoption? Over 56% of respondents in our survey showed us that actually they're saving 50% or more on their data analytics needs by moving to a data lakehouse architecture. So they're cutting their bills in at least half most of the time. That's pretty impressive. They're reducing ETL pipelines, they're reducing storage costs, leveraging multiple data engines, of course, is also important. Customer choice ultimately means they can leverage a common format, but enable broad flexibility and optimization, both for cost as well as using the right tool for the right job, which we think is ultimately the right thing for you, the customer. Now, this sort of customer savings only happen when the technology shift happens from the data warehouse to now a data lakehouse. And we see it in the data. In fact, as Alex mentioned earlier, a significant portion of those coming to a data lakehouse are coming from traditional cloud data warehouses. We also see about a third are coming from on-premises enterprise data warehouses, be it Oracle, Teradata, etc. And then finally, we're seeing those that have traditionally invested in data lake architectures, HDFS environments, etc., also moving to a lakehouse approach. So really, all three markets are really converging to leverage this data lakehouse because they all see the benefits of this. Now, the underpinnings of a lakehouse is about the table format, right? That's been a big advance from the traditional announcements around data lakes many years ago. And those have been around Apache Iceberg, Hudi, or Delta. Now, as I said, the underpinning is that table format. Now, what is a table format? It's really the metadata that enables engines to operate on the data in the lake like a data warehouse. And of course, you have to combine that with a smart engine and a metadata catalog. Now, there's lots of formats out there, to be sure. Delta Lake, as you can see on the screen, is about 43% today, and Iceberg is about 30%, Hudi at about 18% from our survey respondents. But interestingly, if you look at where they expect to be in 3 years, they actually expect that 37% of them will be on Apache Iceberg. And in fact, we actually expect Delta Lake to shrink. But that's pretty significant. If Delta is doing what it needs to do, why the popularity in Iceberg? We'll talk about that in a moment. I'm curious, have you all adopted an open table format? And if so, which one? Apache Iceberg, Delta Lake, Hive, or Hudi? I'm very curious about which one you all are considering out there. Great. Now, if you think about why this is the case, it's really about what open source really means. Now, Iceberg's open developer community is really what's fueling this adoption. If you can see the logos on the screen, nearly 90% of the contributions are coming from 15 contributors into the Iceberg project. The community is building it, they're approving it, they're contributing to it on a broad basis, and they're self-regulating it on behalf of the broader market. So you get that massive benefit of a community driving open source. It doesn't simply mean that you have to make source available to everybody. That doesn't mean much. What really matters is that there's a community around this that is building an ecosystem of tooling and capabilities that fuels outcomes for customers. Ecosystems that fuel the investments. No vendor lock-in and choice for customers. Let's look at the poll real quick on what you all said about which table format you're considering going forward or leveraging today. That's awesome. Great to see. In fact, your numbers are even better in the audience here than we see here from our State of the Lakehouse survey. 46% of you have said you're going to move on to Apache Iceberg. 35% on Delta, not surprising given the history of where Delta was. And Hive and Hudi are interesting also in terms of percentages. And Hive, of course, has a legacy of being that historical table. And so Hudi is coming up a little bit, but we'll see interesting use cases there. So nice to see Iceberg at top of the list, and I think we'll continue to see that trend. In fact, even at AWS reInvent, we saw massive announcements by Amazon to support Apache Iceberg in the context of leveraging S3. So we also see the public cloud providers adopting open table formats like Apache Iceberg. Now, lakehouses are great, and clearly we've talked a lot about the value of lakehouses. But remember where we started the conversation. Users want to lower MTTI, or their mean time to insight. They want to go faster and get the insights they need to drive business decisions. That requires them to be able to drive self-service analytics. And what does self-service analytics mean? It means going all the way back to the raw data, of course subject to governance and security, so they can actually do what they need to do to drive outcomes for the business. And this is about mitigating the need for as much ETL pipelines as possible. If you can shrink the number of ETL pipelines in your environment, the faster you can get more self-service analytics to your enterprise. And that's what this is really about. So at Dremio, we have a pretty opinionated view on this. We have this concept of shifting left in your data. So what does shifting left mean? It means a notion that not only can you have clients manipulate data, but you can now enable users to move earlier in the data pipeline process, in that data lifecycle, create views on that data, and be able to go from raw all the way to structured analytics and insights without having to work through ETL pipelines or bothering the central data team. In fact, we want the data team to be focused on more interesting problems than having to constantly manage data pipelines. We do this through Lakehouse economics and value, and of course, our intelligent query engine. This is how it works. So let's talk a little bit, double click on this a little bit. Dremio enables users to go to raw data. We do this through the creation of virtual views on data. And of course, we can enable users to stack on views on top of views. And that enables them much more flexibility. But that flexibility can sometimes come with performance issues. But the beauty of Dremio is that we leverage both an intelligent query engine as well as our reflections capabilities to provide the right data acceleration at the right time so the customer gets the perfect balance of price performance in their usage of the system and enables self-service for their enterprise. This eliminates pipelines, intermediate pipelines, all the way to that raw data. This is really the power of Dremio, self-service analytics for the enterprise. We reduce the mean time to insight even further for the user beyond traditional lakehouses. And that's empowering to get insights to those users day in and day out. And at the end of the day, you lower your mean time to insight through lowering need for ETL pipelines and burdening internal data teams. You're able to go faster, bringing those insights to the business users much more directly. Now, in addition to that, and bringing in mean time to insight lower, we also want to enable the next generation of data operations. Dremio pioneered a Git-based data management approach. We believe this is the next generation of data operations. So allow me to walk through this slide a bit. You can see a sort of a branch here. In the middle, this central trunk reflects what you might have seen in traditional software engineering practices. This notion you have this main trunk of data in the system. And you can see two branches that come off after that second circle, an ETL branch and a data science branch. Now let's talk about these branches for a moment. These branches are not simply copies of data. They are actually pointers to the original data. So now you're able to take production quality data, create a branch of it to conduct operations on that branch without impacting production systems. So in this example you see here, you have an ETL branch at the top. That ETL branch allows users and data engineers to be able to ingest data in that top ETL branch. And again, no impact to production. And in that branch, you're able to conduct data quality checks and manipulate that data before merging it back to main, if you will. And in doing so, you have much more decreased data downtime. And you're able to validate and check everything on that branch. So really powerful capability here. Let's take the second example, data science and AI example. We all talk about AI today, but at the root of AI, you have to have that right data, and you have to enable data science teams to move quickly. So what do? Well, Dremio enables you to create yet one more branch of that data through data science. And there you can see in the bottom of that chart, we're able to get data scientists to create a branch, and again, not copying, it's simply a pointer to the original data, conduct their feature engineering work on that, create new columns, new manipulations, new calculated fields, etc. And in that, train their models against that for validation. And they can choose to merge that back to main if they think that's a feature that they want to maintain for quite some time, or they can keep that branch separate and keep it there for testing purposes, or decide, you know what, this feature engineering work didn't work, I'm simply going to drop that branch. Right? Pretty powerful capabilities. And this is about bringing software engineering practices back to data operations. So in summary, as we've talked about from the beginning, Dremio delivers you all the key value propositions, enabling improved data optimization in your enterprise, dramatically reducing mean time to insight, and lowering your costs. All of this based on this fundamental approach of shifting left in your analytics workloads. Dremio combines an intelligent query engine, a self-service experience, again, removing the need for as many ETL pipelines, and then finally, next-generation data operations through our Git-inspired data management. I hope this gives you a sense of who Dremio is. We're very excited about these technologies, and we believe we've seen a lot of value from customers. Now, of course, I'd have to point you to the next steps here. So the first is a QR code for our 2024 State of the Lakehouse, Data Lakehouse report. We'd love for you to check it out. I've obviously referenced some statistics here, but there's far more available in that document. And then secondly, we have the Dremio Getting Started QR code. So definitely click on that and head out to dremio.com. And there you can take advantage of Dremio both as software as well as our fully managed cloud offering. Thank you again for the time.
Fantastic presentation to start off this showcase event. Thank you very much, Sendur. Back with you here in the studio. A few points in there, just love to maybe just revisit. I think we've got a few minutes before Mike's going to join us here in the studio. So hopefully a couple of opportunities to dig a little bit deeper into what you've been able to share with the audience so far. The first thing I wanted to just reflect on, you mentioned that slide though, you had a slide a bit earlier on which indicated Lakehouses are great, but they don't enable self-service analytics. And so you spent a little bit of time talking about that. But I suppose, can you just, in your opinion, why is it so crucial to make data more self-service?
It's a great question. You know, Alex, when you've last seen a data chart, a slide, analytic, a conclusion, if you will, I'm pretty sure your first question was, how did we get to that data? What's the underlying thing that enabled that data to happen? And so too often we see that in the enterprise. Certainly I feel that way when I see analytics, even at Dremio. And so I want to be able to double click on those analytics. How did we generate that data? And often when you've generated that data, you might want to say, I want to pivot on these 3 other columns. I want to add this additional information in. They have 2 options today. The old paradigm, you could say, I'm going to go to another team and wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks to go make that happen. But with Dremio, you're actually able to do that in a self-service manner on our platform. go back to raw, add the columns you need, run your analytics. So now the decision that would take you 3 weeks to go to a team who's already, unfortunately, pretty busy with that data volume and operations they're dealing with, now they're able to run Dremio and actually cut that to hours by yourself. So now your decision is less than a day instead of waiting 3+ weeks. And that's pretty powerful. And we see that time and time again with our customers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you obviously shared that QR code, or a couple of QR codes right at the end there, didn't you, on your slide deck? One of which was, of course, the report in full, all 17 pages of it, which, of course, we encourage folks to take a look. But the other one was, of course, Dremio for free, or the platform. Can you tell us a bit about how that works?
Yeah, so our data lakehouse is available both in a self-managed context, we call that Community Edition, or in a fully managed model, and we call that Dremio Cloud. And so both are available. So unlike a lot of other solutions out in the market, we can run not only in a self-managed model, we can also run in a fully managed model as well for customers. Frankly, because every customer has different data residency needs and security needs, so we want to provide that flexibility to those folks. And of course, it's freely available in that you can download and leverage it today without ever having to give us a penny. We really want, because we believe so much in that data lakehouse architecture.
Absolutely. So there's the message, folks. And I think we did flash it up there, didn't we, just for another moment or two, the 2 QR codes. But that does bring us almost to time, I think, here in our opening keynote session. You're going to be back with us anyway for our panel a little bit later on, so it won't be the last time we're seeing you. But thank you very much for kickstarting our showcase here today. Thank you. Lovely stuff. Well, there we go, ladies and gents, and what a start to our Dremio showcase here, of course.